Hey, everybody out there in YouTube land and podcast music lover community and the VC community and the offshoot Beatles community. This is Andy Nichols, co host of Paul McCartney podcast, Two Legs, that I do with my partner Tom Hunyadi. And this is the first installment on my new channel, offshoot channel of Two Legs called The Other Leg, Andy's Music Vault. And it's just something I thought I would tackle. I know that there's other people out there that have sub channels within their YouTube channels. I know that Joe Mayo has a sub channel about is dedicated to movies and television, and he's such a connoisseur of television and films. And I know that him and my partner Tom Hunyadi are thinking about doing something very similar. And I thought of just doing something very similar too, but just for the music. And as you know, as we discussed on Two Legs a few months ago, we did a series on our YouTube channel live where we kind of picked our top 30 favorite albums outside of the Beatles. And those were some really fun episodes we did. I think we did three of them. We did 10 each week, 10 albums each week. And it really kind of garnered a lot of comments from our fans and our viewers to show what else we were into. Because Tom and I are passionate McCartney fans, and we always will be. And he's absolutely my favorite artist of all time, bar none. And so are the Beatles and the solo Beatles. But diving into other genres and other artists of music is something that I've been doing, for most of my adult life. And it's actually, I've enjoyed the Beatles and Paul McCartney and the Beatles stuff more because I can take breaks from it. And this is something Tom and I talked about when he was out here last week for the fest for Beatles fans, which I'm still recovering from, and I think he is too. And we've talked about a lot of the different stuff we're into. I'm a huge lover of progressive rock. Yes is probably my second favorite band of all time after the Beatles and solo Beatles. I've seen Yes 30 something times now, including all the various offshoot versions of the band solo. I've met John Anderson once. I've met Rick Wakeman. A big prog fan. So I love Genesis, but Yes is up there. I mean, one of the best of all time. Genesis, The Who, those are the biggies. Elton John, Bob Dylan, those are the big, people for me. One of the things I just love discovering new old music. To me, it's new because it might be 50 years old, but to me, it's new. I'm middle aged. I wasn't around for any of this stuff. Most of it when it came out, only kind of knew about it, read about it. But taking the time to dive in, to me, it's like discovering new music, even though it might be 40, 50, 60 years old. I remember doing that some years ago with the Zombies Odyssey and Oracle LP. And fortunately, I got to go see them in concert, and I met Rod Argent and Colin Blunstone, and they were two nice gentlemen. And then that's just an example of discovering new old music. So I've constantly been doing that, and largely due to the pandemic, I was able to do a lot of that too. I remember early, right when it started, I kind of jumped into Bob Dylan, who I was kind of always a casual fan. But I have a very good friend of mine who's seen Bob Dylan in concert probably 50 times. And I just decided to take the plunge one day. And I spent most of 2020 absorbing everything Dylan. As you know, if you can see on that back shelf, but there's a large portion of it is dedicated to Bob. And buying everything that I could. And Bob Dylan is so prolific and he has so many albums that you can get a lot of his CDs relatively cheap. The used CD market is so cheap now. So I was able to scoop up just about everything from Dylan. And I haven't worked through it all, trust me. But I've gotten through most of it. I'd say 90% of it. I think the only periods of Dylan that I'm not too familiar with right now would be anything from like that mid 80s period. That kind of, I would say anything from Empire Burlesque to Time Out of Mind. And I even like Knocked Out Loaded because it's got Brownsville Girl on it. So I'm still working my way through that kind of middle period, and there's some gems in there. But that's just an example of why when I choose to dive into music and an artist or a group, I like to jump in all in. I like to know every aspect of the artist, read as much as I can. I'm a student, of music and a researcher of music. I have a master's degree in popular music studies. So it's, researching artists and studying them is something, it's a hobby of mine and one that I've done for a long time. And that's whenever I discover somebody new or something I want to learn more about, I am going to dive head in. And, that's it's kind of, you kind of lose yourself in some rabbit holes for a while, for a period of weeks or months. But it's really enjoyable because you really get to learn more music that way and pass that knowledge on to some other people that might not have heard about it. And on this first installment of, Andy's Music Vault, I'm going to jump into a band that I only really knew kind of for a couple of songs up until last June, it was. And that's Procol Harum. Recently, Gary Brooker passed away. And, I was able to jump onto that, very late, obviously. And then you hear Procol Harum, most people think Whiter Shade of Pale, Conquistador, maybe A Salty Dog. And those are the songs I knew. And not realizing what an incredible discography that this band has, and this man, and Gary Brooker and lyricist Keith Reed put together over the course of really a 10-year period from 67 to 77. I'll never forget it. I was driving around going to get my hair cut last June, and I have Sirius XM radio in my car, and I was listening to deep tracks. And sometimes you hear some really deep tracks that you don't know, and you turn it up. Other times it catches your ear. And I heard a track called For Licorice John, which is from the Grand Hotel album from 1973. Purdue, and that's the other great thing that ties in the Beatle connection. Most of Procol Harum's classic albums were all produced by Chris Thomas, which I'm fascinated with. I mean, I know it's great to have the Chris Thomas history with the White Album and everything that he's done with Paul, Back to the Egg, Elton John. I'm fascinated with Chris Thomas's work as a producer with Gary Brooker and Procol Harum. But anyway, For Licorice John is on the Grand Hotel album. And it just, you just hear something and it just catches your ear. And I got home that day, and I started looking up the album and reading up it on Wikipedia, listening to some tracks on YouTube. And then what does every vinyl connoisseur do? They hear it, they get a bug to go listen to something, they go buy something, they go to the record store, and they find it. And that's what I did. I just started with the Grand Hotel and buying that up, and then from there I just went on and on and on and on to go through everything and read up about everything that I could over the next, from June of 2021 to the end of the year, to try to get all I could get my hands on. For Procol Harum. And then sadly in February, just a few weeks back, Gary Brooker passed away, and I knew it, but I had been really following up and catching up and reading everything that I could about them. I mean, I even picked up this biography on them that I read when I went out to see my podcast partner Tom in August last year. This is called The Ghosts of a Whiter Shade of Pale, written by Henry Scott Irvine, with a foreword by Martin Scorsese, the filmmaker. And this is a really, really nice book that kind of goes up until about I want to say mid 2000s or so. Really good, nice, good book. There's not too many books on the band, but just to dive through. There's nothing very hard to put it into words. The excitement of diving into the albums and discovering things for the first time and watching videos on YouTube and people like Norman Maslov, who had a great video kind of ranking all the Procol Harum albums. I watched that just to get a little bit of better knowledge of what I'd be diving into, the eras, the lineups. There was so many personnel changes with Procol Harum, not unlike my favorite prog band, Yes, which had so many different lineups. But the one constant was the commander, Gary Brooker, who was there throughout. And then reading about, unfortunately, a lawsuit that was brought up by the original organist, Matthew Fisher, claiming, 50% of the song, A Whiter Shade of Pale, was his. And it's sad when that happens with rock bands. But it's a case that he won, and I don't think him and Gary ever patched things up. But it's weird, as I kind of go through the Procol discography, he actually comes back into the band, Matthew Fisher, for a later album, The Wells on Fire, which I just bought last week. And that's really good, too. So he was gone from the band, then he came back there in the early 2000s, and then he left again. So, and I have to say, there's a great documentary, and just as I say, Cherry Red Records has done a great job with everything related to Procol Harum. Mark Powell with Cherry Red Records. There's a great interview on YouTube with Gary. It's about an hour and change long, goes over the whole history. of the band, and Cherry Red and Esoteric Recordings they get a lot of credit here for having all the archive stuff available and putting out the 2-disc and the 3-disc remasters for all the Procol Harum stuff. They've done just a great job getting all that stuff out there. So the first, I'm just going to go run through the discography real quick. The self-titled, again, these are all the recent kind of 2-disc remasters. Self-titled 1967. Whiter Shade of Pale was not on this album originally in the UK. Nor was Conquistador. Well, Conquistador was on it, but it was not a hit until later. The album opens up with Conquistador, but it didn't become a hit until about 5 years later. So the self-titled album, really great tracks on here. One of my favorites which became a live staple of theirs later on, called an instrumental written by Matthew Fisher called "Repent Walpurgis." I hope I'm saying that right, but it's just a great closer of the album. And I love, this is such a 60s album cover, and even on the back, and on the album, on the vinyl too, even on the vinyl here, it says, to be listened, in which the spirit it was made. So that's very 60s, very 60s. So these are all, you can get these all on Amazon and Cherry Red Records. The 2-disc has, of course, loads of outtakes and bonus material. Of course, A Whiter Shade of Pale is on here. Also another favorite, Hamburg, is on there as well. Good Captain Clack, Surtees, She Wandered Through the Garden Fence, Lime Street Blues, Salad Days. So they're the first nice, good opening debut album. Their second album, Shine On Brightly. This has become a big favorite of mine. This is the original UK cover, and again, this is, I think, a 3 CD Cherry Red Esoteric reissue, which is just awesome. You get the stereo and the mono on here. Loads of outtakes. Shine On Brightly, quite rightly so. Magdalene, and probably the first real big prog epic. One of the sidelong, almost the whole second side, is a kind of a 5-part suite called "In Held 'Twas an I," which again was on the live album, which became one of their best-selling albums, which I'll show you in a minute. And knowing that I loved prog rock and and Genesis, I knew I'd have to give that song a chance. And and I said, well, am I forcing myself to like this or not? But it's tremendous. It's made up out of glimpses of Nirvana, "'Twas Tea Time at the Circus," "In the Autumn of My Madness," "Look to Your Soul," and the grand finale. And it's Procol Harum's prog epic. It's their epic masterpiece. One that they've become known. That's the one that they go to, and the one that the fans, the hardcore fans, really kind of always remember. And there's some great recordings of the band doing this live, even as late as 2018. Gary and the band played it. There's a great live version in London, and even still in his latter days there, he could still belt out the tune, and the band just jams on it. Personnel, others, how could we forget the great Robin Trower, who was in Procol Harum, the brilliant guitarist seen here on the book here. There's Robin Trower right there, with Procol for their first 5 albums, which kind of balanced out Brooker's kind of piano and Fisher's organ. Was that bluesy guitarist sound that Robin Trower brought to the band, which works really well on a lot of their music, especially his last couple of albums, Home and Broken Barricades. A little heavier. The first couple of Procol albums were much more romantic European flavor, much more melodic, classically kind of inclined, and that kind of leads us into Salty Dog, the third album, perennial favorite. And again, the deep cuts. Salty Dog is a tremendous song. I'll never get tired of it, but The Devil Came from Kansas, great song, was even in consideration for the ending scene of The Sopranos. That scene in the restaurant when "Don't Stop Believin'" comes on. I think little Steven, who played Silvio, wanted to use "The Devil Came from Kansas," and he was overruled by David Chase. That would have been a great fitter on that to close that show. Milk of Human Kindness. But one of my favorite songs on this album is "All This and More." And apparently, when George Harrison heard "All This and More" on this album, he invited Gary Brooker to play on "All Things Must Pass." So it always comes back to the Beatles. So that's just a beautiful ballad. Again, loads of bonus cuts here, and opens up a couple, even with a poster. Most of these Esoteric remasters have a poster with it as well. and they're so well documented, as they should be. More people need to know about this band. That's the long and the short of this first installment of Andy's Music Vault. And I don't know every single album all the way through yet. I'm not dissecting Tug of War here, folks. I'm still working my way through the discography. There's a couple albums that I know really, really well inside and out, but I'm still working my way through all of them. I think they only have 10 or 11 albums too, but there's so much stuff, especially on these remasters. The fourth album, Home, 1970. And I think some of this work, this is where Chris Thomas enters the picture on the fourth album, Home. And there's a couple tracks where George Martin even, I think, worked on a few of these as well. Whiskey Train, again, more of a rocking album. My personal favorite on this album that I've kind of gone, I don't know this as well as I should yet, but one song that I do really love is called Wailing Stories. And that's been on a lot of live albums, and it's been a staple of their set for many years. Wailing Stories is a great, great song. Real kind of big build-up song, big finish. Absolutely love Wailing Stories. But yeah, this one, I got to give this one a little bit more of a chance. I haven't really totally warmed up to it yet, but I'm working on it. Next album, Broken Barricades. Again, took me a while to kind of, I'm almost there with this one. I think the 70s albums I got into more than the earlier album. Well, this is 1971. This Broken Barricades is Robin Trower's last album with Procol Harum. He left after this, but it kicks off with such a rocker, Simple Sister. That's just a great live song, and it works as a great rocker. And then it goes into the title track, lovely ballad, Broken Barricades. Song for a Dreamer is a song that Robin Trower wrote for the recently departed Jimi Hendrix as well, who died right around the making of this album. Playmate of the Mouth, Luskus Delph, which is kind of a weird kind of play on words. Only 8 tracks on the original album, but I mean, look at the extra content on here, okay? 3 discs. So you've got, a remastered album with 7 or 8 bonus tracks. Then a live CD of a radio show they did here in the New York area on WPLJ. And then another live disc, so the bonus content, and you've got stuff from the earlier albums on there, Repent Walpurgis, some of the stuff from In Hell 'Twas an I, Quite Rightly So. So, I mean, you really get your bang for your buck with these releases. And again, I'm going to say, I can't say it enough. Bravo, Mark Powell and Cherry Red Records for this, for handling all this. And God bless Gary Brooker, if it needs to be said, because that man, he is just amazing. The live album, the big hit. This came out in 70. It was recorded in 71, came out in 72, and was a number 5 album for them. Short, only 5 tracks: Conquistador, Wailing Stories, Salty Dog, All This and More, and of course the epic 18-minute In Hell 'Twas an I. And then this remaster has a couple of bonus tracks on it as well. Again, this is probably Procol's best-selling album. If you've ever gone through the cutout bins and the used record stores, you'll probably see this everywhere. And I remember when I bought this on vinyl years ago, wanting A Whiter Shade of Pale, and really being ticked off that it wasn't on there. Now I'm glad it's not on there, because you cannot miss with these songs. Conquistador, Wailing, Salty Dog, all done well with a symphony orchestra. And learning how this concert came together really was very haphazardly thrown together, and there was a lot of drama and politics along with it. But it's all kind of covered in the Procol Harum history if you read it or watch the video on YouTube I talked about. But this is essential. If you're not gonna jump in and get everything, get this live album. Okay. Now we jump to the mid 70s, and this is currently my favorite period of the band, and that is the Grand Hotel, which was the next album. You see, they had a lot of success with the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra, so they went big. And of course, I'm just kind of paraphrasing what Gary Brooker kind of has retold. They went with a big production. And I have the LPs. I'll show you in a second. Big album, gatefold, poster, lyrics, kind of a concept album. Maybe by 1973, the concept albums were maybe a little passé. I don't think so. I think this is a fine record. Wonderfully produced from start to finish. There is not a track that you cannot miss on here. Starting with the Grand Hotel. And again, I'm pronouncing this second one wrong. It's in French. Toujours El Amour. I don't speak French, but it's a good rocking tune. A Rum Tale, one of my favorite songs. TV Caesar, one of my favorite songs. Souvenir of London, great song. Bringing Home the Bacon, rocking. There's the aforementioned For Licorice John, which is the song that got me all hooked. Fires, which burn brightly. And rounding it out with Robert's Box. Again, a short album. A lot of these Procol albums are not long. They're not 10, 12, 14 tracks. 8 or 9 tracks, 10 maybe. But man, you are not disappointed when you listen to this stuff. And again, the bonus content is off the charts with a bonus disc of DVDs with the promotional films on the DVD as well, and a nice poster. But the vinyls, I'll show you. The vinyl LPs, I'll show you in a minute once I get through all these. Some of them have been redone with colored vinyl, and those are really awesome, worth picking up as well. But I have to say, the next album, I think Grand Hotel is a lot of people's favorite. But I think this next album is my favorite, hands down. I must listen to this album once a week since I bought it. I've bought it on CD, the deluxe CD, multiple versions on vinyl. I do not get tired of it. And that is 1974's Exotic Birds and Fruit. I don't know what it is with this record. I don't know if it's more stripped down. It's more of a rocking album. I know that Gary has stated after the kind of grandiose and production of Grand Hotel and orchestras, they decided to simplify things and kind of go back to that R&B Paramount's route. The Paramounts was the actually Procol Harum in the 60s before they were Procol Harum. They actually worked and toured with the Beatles many times and the Stones. So I know that's the kind of feeling that's on Exotic Birds and Fruit, much more of a kind of a rocking album. Nothing But the Truth kind of comes right out. And I know that was a song that was really pushed by John Peel. It got played on John Peel's show, and it didn't really go anywhere. I know Elton John was a big fan of that song. He talks about it. But Nothing But the Truth, Beyond the Pale, As Strong as Samson, The Idol, The Thin End of the Wedge, Monsieur Amand, which goes back to Shine On Brightly, Fresh Fruit, Butterfly Boys, and New Lamps for Old. 9 tracks, but every one of them is top quality stuff. I mean, I'd put these guys. I'm going to put these guys right below the Beatles. They're on that Yes, Genesis, Who, level for me now. Second disc is a live BBC show in concert, and disc 3 is another live show from Texas in January of '74 with more stuff. Again, my personal favorite. Okay, that was the last album produced by Chris Thomas. And then their last album produced, the next album, okay, and one that I don't really know that well yet, is called Procol's Ninth. And Chris Thomas, they kind of had parted ways after Exotic Birds and Fruit. I think they were both a little stale and tired of each other by that point. But this album is infamous because it was co-produced by Lieber and Stoller. And I think by '75, Procol was starting to wear a little thin. They had a lot of success in Europe as a band in certain parts of Europe and Norway and Germany and Sweden and Norway and things like that. But globally, especially in America, they weren't really kind of doing well, although they were touring quite a bit still. But they weren't not really lighting the charts on fire anymore by '75. I know Pandora's Box is supposed to be the big song from this, and I don't know it that well yet. The Unquiet Zone is also on here. But one of the things they were trying to push for a single on here is they actually covered the Beatles doing 8 days a week. So again, 3 discs, 2 discs of live material. I don't know it that well yet because I'm still absorbing myself from their 60s material and their early 70s stuff. But I'll give this one a chance in due time. That's pretty much it. Now, they made one more album in the 70s. I don't have it on CD yet, and that's Something Magic, which I don't own yet. And then after Something Magic, they broke up. 1977, the onset of punk. This was a very tumultuous time for prog rock bands. Several didn't really kind of survive. Yes made Going for the One in '77, which was a great album. But then they followed it up with Tormato, which I like as an album in '78, but was not anything nearly as good as what Going for the One was. Genesis, Hackett leaves in '77 after Wind and Wuthering, and then they come out with And Then There Were Three. So music was changing. punk had really dominated, and Procol Harum and Yes and Genesis were really considered passé. Yes and Genesis really kind of made it through that era because they reinvented themselves and became big again in the 80s. Genesis, obviously, way more so. Yes had pretty big success there with 90125, but it wasn't to be for Procol Harum. And that was really it for them until the 90s, which I guess is a good way to segue into Gary Brooker's kind of solo career, and again, I just picked these up this week. I picked up 3 of Gary's solo albums. His first one came out in 1979. It's called No More Fear of Flying. Not that expensive. Haven't listened to it yet, but the one I have listened to quite a bit so far is his second one, and that's called Lead Me to the Water, which came out in 82. And listen to the lineup of people on this. You've got Phil Collins, Henry Spinetti, Steve Holley, okay, from Wings, also on here, Eric Clapton, Albert Lee, George Harrison. So yeah, Chris Stainton, who's a great pianist who worked with Eric Clapton, also is a pianist on for a lot of work with The Who, and is on Quadrophenia, my favorite Who album. But this is a good record. I even bought it on CD too. Lead Me to the Water, Gary Brooker. Special thanks to Colin Thurston, Phil Collins, Eric Clapton, and George Harrison. So, he rock royalty right here, man. So give this record a chance. I did listen to this one last week. Pretty good, very enjoyable. And then the third one that I got that I haven't listened to yet is Gary's third album. I think it's his third album. It's called Echoes in the Night, which came out in 85. So I don't know this one yet for Gary, but I will get into that as well. Picking up the Procol CD collection. They reunited in 91 with the original lineup with Robin Trower back, and they made an album called The Prodigal Stranger. And I got this on CD. Fair used. Again, the used CD market is incredible now. You can get these things for like a few bucks, $2 or $3, not much money. Again, don't know it yet, but I'm going to listen to it. And then they made another new album in 2003. This one I've listened to quite a bit because I heard a song on YouTube that caught my ear, and it's called The Signature. It's got some kind of German name, which I'm going to butcher, so I'm not going to say it, but this is 2003's The Well's on Fire. And this, again, I think I paid $2 for this the other day. Cheap. An Old English Dream is a good song. That's been played a lot. That's in a lot of Procol sets. You can see it on YouTube. But that last track, 13, The Signature, great, awesome instrumental track. And it's kind of Matthew Fisher's follow-up to Repent, Walpurgis. And there's the inlay of the band. Jeff Whitehorn, who's the chap in the leather jacket and the glasses, he became Procol's main guitarist from like the early 90s right up until the end. I mean, that's the guy that really kind of kept the band going, and some of the other gents in there too. They've been there. Matthew Pegg, I believe his name is, and I don't know, I'm not really sure the other guys' names yet. Yeah, Mark Przecki and Matt Pegg, those guys, drums and bass. Those guys, were basically touring the touring guys with Procol Harum the last 20 years or so, 15, 20 years. And there's the commander right there. Words by Keith Reid. And I think this was the last album that Keith Reid, the lyricist, wrote for. They released one more CD in 2017, and I picked this up also recently, called Novum. But Keith Reid did not do any lyrics on this CD. And I don't know one note of it, but I will give it a chance. This is the last release that they did. That was done in Gary's lifetime, full album. But I will check that one out as well. Vinyl time. Okay, so I showed you the self-debut. Here's Shine On Brightly, the original UK cover. Now this is a repressing. This is not an original, obviously. They fetch for far too much money. But this is done by Music on Vinyl, which is a nice label, 180 gram. But they do, and I prefer the UK cover. I'm going to tell you why, because the US cover for Shine On Brightly was just not as good. I don't know why they chose to go with this cover for Shine On Brightly. This green sort of kind of naked statue thing playing the piano. The UK was much better than the US cover. Again, 60s people weren't really into. I guess taking chances. Yesterday and Today, the Beatles album cover. I guess we had to be more safe than sorry, and I guess we're heading those ways again now. Procol Harum's Salty Dog on vinyl as well. Great artwork there, done by Keith Reid's girlfriend. She did some of the artwork on a few of the albums on Salty Dog, and iconic album cover. The lighthouse over there, absolutely essential. The aforementioned Home, again, not a great cover, if I'm being honest. Maybe that's why I haven't given it a chance, but shouldn't judge vinyl by their covers, right? Another cool find that I got actually while I was out visiting Tom, an interview album, kind of a promotional thing. This is a radio interview that they did to promote Broken Barricades in 1971. I don't know if it was for WPLJ. Really cool though, very interesting interview LP. That was in decent shape. Okay. Broken Barricades. Now, this is an interesting album because I have two versions I'm going to show you here. Now, the original had a die cut. And you're going to say, what's a die cut? If you don't know what a die cut is, the original had a die cut cover that opened up that showed the faces of the four musicians in the band, okay? Keith Reid is often credited as a member of the band, even though he was just a songwriter. But there he is on the back. But the die cut cover is pretty cool because it opens up just like this, and you can read all the lyrics. And subsequent pressings did not have that die-cut cover. The CDs don't. But I have to say, some vinyl remasters, there's a company called Salvo that did a bunch of Procol remasters in the kind of late 2000, 2009, 10 or 11 or something like that. And another vinyl label called Let Them Eat Vinyl repressed all of Procol's albums on double LP, colored vinyl. Broken Barricades was one of them. Obviously, no die cut here, but you get two LPs with some bonus tracks, but on colored vinyl. A really, really nice job with the gray here. Those of you that follow Two Legs know that Tom and I are just gaga for colored vinyl. He more so than me, but I like it. But Tom he's crazy for colored vinyl, but these are just made so well. These kind of hard to come by now. These were not that cheap, but worth getting if you're interested. If you're a vinyl connoisseur and you like colored vinyl, the albums are in great shape. I'll play these before I even play those originals now, just because of the quality is in way much better shape. That's Broken Barricades. Okay. The live album with the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra. This is a German pressing of this on the green Chrysalis label. There it is. Yeah, that's the green Chrysalis label. And again, European copy, so it's a little glossy. Those of you that watch Two Legs know my imports. For whatever reason, in Europe, the albums are made with a little bit more gloss and more quality than they are here for us Yanks in the U.S. This is probably my first Procol album, which is just the best of Procol Harum, which I probably bought at the time only looking for a whiter shade of pale. Look, see, I paid $3 for it. Yeah. Whiter shade of pale, Lime Street Blues, Hamburg, and the wee small hours of sixpence, quite rightly so, Shine On Brightly, Salty Dog, Whiskey Train Long, Gone Greek, Simple Sister, and Conquistador. Haven't really seen this anywhere. I don't think it's on CD either. The next one. Grand Hotel on white vinyl. Now this is a beauty, this one. White vinyl, but only one LP, not two. The other ones have been two, but this is on white. And I believe this was a Record Store Day exclusive this year, actually, or last year, I should say, in 2021. This was a Record Store Day release on white vinyl. Can't hold it up here, but just a great job. I've played it a few times. The original you can find halfway decently priced, but it's got the nice book in it as well. Welcome to the Grand Hotel. See, it's got that kind of concept album vibe to it that a lot of the albums from the 70s have. All the artwork with the lyrics in there, to go to each song. Very reminiscent, actually, of Ringo's 1973 album, Ringo, which came with a book, also with illustrations by Klaus Verman on one side and the lyrics on the next. Very similar, and both came out in the same year, obviously. So, you know, lavish package, which, Gary Brooker said they, because of the success of the live album, they had a little more money so they could kind of go over the top with their next album and go with orchestras and a gatefold package, but classy with a capital C. Telling you. Okay, my current favorite, Exotic Birds and Fruit, as I told you. Played this one this morning on red vinyl. Red vinyl. So you got the label on one side and then the artwork on another. 2 LPs with this one. And again, it says Salvo, but it says they were manufactured by a company called Let Them Eat Vinyl. What a name! Seeing that they've got more for sale here on their little insert as well. But red vinyl, The Idol, As Strong as Samson. These are songs that I'll never get tired of listening to them. Great photo, great write up as well. Procol's 9th on vinyl. Got this. This wasn't that expensive. This is an original from the 70s. Again, have to dive into it still. And then we finish it up with Something Magic, which I got. See, Tom. There's my Zia label. It's still on here. I didn't take it off yet. This I think has been redone as well. This again, not really considered essential. There is a side long piece on here called The Worm in the Tree, which is kind of half spoken word, half music. Again, by this point in the band, it's Mick Grabham, Pete Solly, and Chris Copping, and of course, the great B.J. Wilson on drums. And I should have mentioned him sooner because really what a talent B.J. Wilson is as a drummer. Listen to some of these songs, especially on Exotic Birds and Fruit. Listen to what B.J. Wilson can do on some of those songs. Just a tremendous drummer, and sadly, accidentally took his own life. I think in the late '80s. So, but really, the drumming, the drum work on all the Procol stuff is just absolutely tremendous. And then just today, I picked up a little bit of a live thing. This is just kind of Procol was very good to their fans in terms of giving them online content, download-only stuff. This is something I just picked up, live downloads to some of their live shows that they had done, again, in Europe. Very prolific touring band. Go check out their set list on setlist.fm. They really delivered their stuff to the fans. They really did. They did well by them. And then wrapping it up, I've got a couple of DVDs as well to show off here, if I don't drop everything. Okay, 2003, Live at the Union Chapel. This kind of coincides with their 2003 album, The Well's on Fire, with Matthew Fisher, the original organist, in the band still. Worth picking this one up. This one's actually on YouTube. You can watch the whole thing. This is a great concert. This is Procol Harum in concert with the Danish National Concert Orchestra and Choir. This has got to be one of the best live concerts I've ever seen, bar none. It's like Concert for George Worthy. It's that good, with a full orchestra. And then just a couple of sorted live DVDs. This one is from, I want to say, 2001. I don't know the venue. And then another live one. And I think that this is just kind of promotional films, which I picked this up also. So, yeah, it's been quite a ride with Procol Harum and getting to know their material. And every day I hear a new song and I'm just amazed. I really am. And very thankful that Gary Brooker and Keith Reed and Robin Trower and B.J. Wilson and all the great members of the band gave us this music to fall back on and listen to, because it's timeless. It really is, and I hope more people discover it. I really do. That's why I'm doing the video. So they're really, really worth the plunge. I can't recommend them enough, and that'll do it for Andy's Music Vault #1, the first installment. Next week, next time, who knows? Maybe it'll be Dylan, maybe it'll be ELO, maybe it'll be Genesis. I'm not sure. But I felt that the first one should be devoted to a new band that I've been very happily pleased with listening to this last year. And highly encourage you all to do the same. So we'll see you on Two Legs, and we'll see you next time. Bye.